Hello everyone and welcome to the Squadron episode 16! That's one more episode than 15, which was last week's episode. Go check it out. Or, if you haven't checked out last week's episode, check out the week before, because this is episode 3 of our Archetype deck breakdown weird
Third and
series.
final.
We're talking about
Midrange.
The middle of the road, happy fun time Mega Go Gaia decks that love their value and love all things all cool. We have two things to talk about before we get into that though. Firstly, we'll cover off a few of the spoilers you've seen this week. We'll save a few of the relevant spoilers throughout the video for the mid-range talk. And secondly, we'll cover up just a little bit of what we saw in the stream and the deck building article. There's really not too much to talk about. The stream itself was really fun, but let's take it away. So, capping off those months, last month was Cunning Month, and we capped off with our final card, which was an event, a Cunning event. No more of those as far as we know. Maybe we'll see next month. We can vote on some more cards, who knows. But this card, Outmaneuver.
Yes, it is a 3-cost mono Cunning event that says choose a lane, space, or ground. Exhaust all units in that lane.
Every single one of them. That means you and your opponents. So
I think this is probably, and I'm going to be proved wrong immediately, like as a card drops tonight, that disproves me.
Yeah, probably.
I think this is the closest thing we're going to get to a board wipe.
I mean, we've got Overwhelming Barrage, and that does a good job with prerequisites. I wouldn't consider this a board wipe, but I definitely would say this is the most board disruption we've seen, because even Overwhelming Barrage, and don't get me wrong, that card disrupts the board and can just take your opponent out of the game with key pieces, but you can tap, or you can rest all 6 ground units or 6 space units.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's not a board wipe per se. I said it's the closest thing to a board wipe, because I don't think we're going to get choose the lane, defeat all units in that lane kind of deal.
Whoa. Wow.
That'd be
so sweet. Do it.
I think this is one of two things, really. It's a kind of control piece to keep a lane down, or it is a final gambit to be like, I'm winning this turn. I need you to sit down for a second while I do it.
Yeah, I think my thoughts on this card are Yellow Cunning Event, classic exhaust cards. This goes in maybe like a Thrawn deck or a slower stall deck, where you're like, okay, I've got Chimera in space, my opponent doesn't have any space, but they've got like 8 ground units, and I've got like a regional governor, and I just need to buy some time. Outmaneuver, swing Chimera, name this card, pitch it from your hand. I think it's a slow card. In my opinion, it's actually a sideboard card from what I feel right now. There's no, seeing the decks that we have right now, there's no deck I can see currently that I think would want to run this over Asteroid Sanctuary or over No Good to Me Dead or over 2-cost starter layer. To exhaust units. I know those cards can't hit all of the units, but they cost 2. Usually when you're doing it, you're to hit key impact units. You can still swing with your units. So there's a lot of upsides to weigh, and I just think this card's great, but I think right now its most viable option is as a sideboard foil to aggro decks.
Yeah, I think this is definitely going to see play if we start to see space decks fully come into their own and being like, I will rest all of your ground and I will swing in space. And then next turn, I will rest all your ground and I will swing.
Or even vice versa. Like, I'm playing against a space race deck, I'll rest all of your space and swing your ground. I think if you're running a heavy deck like that, it's definitely something you've seen. I mean, hey, the devs have said yellow is where we're going to find a lot of our cheap space units. So it's definitely a possibility. I just think, as I said, currently, I see no deck that wants to run this. But that could definitely change. Yeah,
and there was some interesting talk at the beginning of the stream that we had last night, for us last night.
This morning, sort of. Yeah. Whatever.
Where there was a weird talk that, pretty out of context, but you can kind of glean some stuff from it, I think, when they were talking about Tyler was talking about having Bright Hope in his deck, and Xander made the joke that Jeremy didn't have any space, right? And Tyler specifically brought those Bright Hopes to deal with Vader's kind of space aggro of those like kind of TIE fighters and stuff like that. And that is really, I think, something that is actually going to start to see itself come to fruition.
I agree, because we've actually not seen a lot of low-cost space fighter units, per se. We've definitely seen some, but we're really just like starting to open up into like the Outer Rim Headhunters, Distant Patrollers, Arcs, X-Wings. Like, we're seeing a lot more of that, and I gotta say, those are some of the more powerful cards, especially in decks like Leia, where they can action cheat the double swing. So I agree. I think it really shows that Tyler had the constructed options to... I feel like he probably was allowed to field more cards, and we know that's the case because he got to show off some cards. Whereas the Vader deck didn't have any new reveals, so I think the Luke deck was kind of meant to be the focus of this one. That Tyler ran those cards, and to me, and to you, that speaks volumes of that behind the scenes, where if they weren't, hey, you've got these card lists to build your deck out of, we probably would have seen a Space Race deck.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, when he was saying that kind of, I brought these Bright Hopes to defend my space area, and then, oh, you didn't bring any space. It's like, oh, all these cards that I brought are useless. So I wasn't even like, oh, I'll just play them anyway, and they'll be free to swing. Usually be happy about that sort of thing, but it was actually a negative reaction to, now my Bright Hopes are useless. Now like I'm in more trouble now because you haven't brought space. And that's going to be a really interesting thing as we move on into the game, into the meta, on is that kind of like, I have to defend, like I'm not going aggro in space, I'm going defensive in space, versus someone just saying, well, I'm not going space, so you've brought up all these defensive options for space that are now not going to have the effect that they...
But I think that then again talks to leaders like Vader just being really good, because even if they're space, even if they're ground, ping, get them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Value. So, but I think Outmaneuver is an interesting card. I mean, we could just be reading way hard into that, but, I feel like we're right on that. Maybe. Outmaneuver, probably like a 2.5 out of 5 on the Spice. It just doesn't fit anywhere. Every time I think about cards, I just can see this card being like, cool, in this specific situation, it's really good. And if I'm always thinking about specific situations for a card to be applicable, chances are it's not bad. It just belongs in my sideboard. We got 3 guys, and we got 3 guys with guns, and we got 3 guys with guns shooting. Yeah,
we got 3 guys with guns shooting to talk about. The first one we're going to talk about is Wilderness Survivor. Very cool card. It's a 3-cost neutral vigilance.
He's got them Cloud City Wingguard stats.
Cloud City Wingguard stats, 2/4 shielded.
He's got the Trooper keyword. Let's go. Another Trooper to add to the repertoire. You want to build your green-blue Chronic Troopers? Let's go.
Absolutely. No, but seriously, this card is interesting. The 2/4 stat line is a strange one that kind of shares itself with that Cloud City Wingguard and Yoda. It's kind of that weird situation where it doesn't trade a lot with a lot of things, but it also doesn't die from a lot of things. It's a really good unit to go, I need to take down your leader and you're 2 points off, or you're 1 point off, or because there have definitely been a lot of times where a lot of the leaders in this game are 7 health. Yes, and I think that's really important in that way that I would use this a lot and Yoda a lot to go, awesome, especially this one because she's shielded, so it gets that shield, swing into Tarkin, takedown. And you're running takedown because you're running blue. Yeah. Having shielded on this unit is good because it can get around things like, hey, overwhelming barrage. You can't just kill this guy. It makes him a nuisance. While he might not be the best card in the deck, he's better than you might think because, hey, he comes down, he's got a shield, he'd probably kill your Viper Probe Droid, and then he's just a 2/4, and that's not bad. That's pretty good. Like, you don't want to put effort into removing him because it doesn't feel good enough to remove, but then it's just going to snowball into getting hits in. And, like, let's address the elephant in the room. This card is sweet in Chewbacca. Absolutely. I was just about to say the exact same thing. Absolutely. This card feels like it was made for
It feels like it was built for
Chewbacca.
him.
Being able to chuck him down with a Sentinel tag
He
on
is
him.
a Cloud City Wingguard with shielded for the that's
Exactly.
that's amazing. That can shut down people's turns.
Yeah, that can just completely ruin someone's aggro. They're like, I want to swing with this and this and this and this. It's like, now I need to use 2 of those swings, or a swing and a piece of removal, or heaven forbid, 2 pieces of removal.
I don't want to take down this 3-cost 2/4 shielded.
No.
And if you don't, and your opponent hasn't realized what you're up to, and they go, oh, okay, well, I'll swing into him and get rid of the shield with my Tarkin. Takedown?
Yeah, and then
Like,
suddenly...
you've just fallen into the trap. I think this card, and purely because of shielded. Like, we know Cloud City Wingguards are good. I think we've all out there had our time now, because that card's been out for quite a while. It was one of the first
ones out, yeah.
We've all had our games where someone's pulled down a Cloud City Wingguard and we've rolled our eyes and gone, if only he wasn't there! Ah, that's Sentinel! And now Chewbacca can do that, but Chewbacca can do it with shielded. Open fire can't hit this. Force choke can't get this. Like, you have to play awkwardly.
Yeah, it just stops those decks that are just like, I play something, I remove it. I play something, I remove it. Like, it really kind of hampers those decks, especially if they're not playing blue.
Like, I mean, if they got Waylay, well, cool. I'll just do it again.
Yeah, Waylay is one of those things where you're paying the same amount of resources to just bounce it back to my hand as I am playing it, I'm not really fussed by that.
If you take down or vanquish this, man, have you lost? But, like, it really depends. Because if you're in the instance where you take down it and you win, cool. But, like, a lot of the time, you know, they'll play it and it might not feel like... You'll just sit there and you'll be like, I could kill it. It's just not the time. Like, it's not... I don't need it that bad. It just doesn't feel good enough to warrant that. And even if I'm swinging it with a unit like Boba Fett Disintegrator, like, I get you, but ping the shield off and then we just hit each other.
Yeah, and then it doesn't even kill it, right? Like, it's one of those things, it's like, even Boba Fett Disintegrator, one of the best removal units in the game, cannot one-shot this.
Yeah, because it hits him with the shield, and then they just kind of high-five.
Yeah.
And then Boba's down to 3 health. Cool, open fire.
Yeah,
he's dead
suddenly
now,
becomes...
and my little 2/4 guy got you. Like, I think this is what we were talking about with shielded units, right? Like, having a shield coming in is good stuff. You got conversion center, cool. Ambush this guy in, swing at you, put the shield on afterwards. Like,
yeah,
that's good stuff. I just think this is a solid card, solid costs, solid stat line, and what ties it together is shielded.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, especially in Chewbacca, who's just looking for those 3-cost units, this is one that's just like, aha, there it is. That's what I'm looking for. And more of that. And I think the more of these that we get as we go forward, if we get more blue hero cards, more neutral cards in that 3-cost range, Chewbacca every single time is going to go, 3-cost unit that's just generally good? Awesome. How about a Sentinel?
And I mean, if you are inclined to start building more decks surrounding Troopers as a theme, well, hell, this card's pretty sweet. Death Trooper is a tough card in this game to make work and make feel good. Well, if you're playing blue-green Troopers, play your Death Trooper, play this guy, Death Trooper pings the shield off him and then hits you. You don't actually lose anything. You've got 2 Troopers on the board, get General Taj out, bump them up. Like, there's enough said to say that's some nice synergy in itself, not only in villains. I definitely think it's an all-star in Chewbacca, but it's just a nice card to run if you're in Blue Hero or, you know, in villain. Honestly, 3.5 out of 5. I reckon this is a pretty standout card. I like it. I'm a big fan.
The second man with gun that we're going to be talking about is Partisan Insurgent.
Partisan Insurgent. Both of these cards were shown off by Town Number 9. Live stream on Twitch. Go check them out. But this card's sweet.
Yeah, this card is also really good. It is a 2-cost.
Two cost
I was
neutral
just
aggro, 1/4.
With if you own another aggression unit, it gains raid 2.
Well, this card couldn't get any better, except for the fact it has the Rebel tag.
It does have the Rebel tag.
I mean, we talked about Chewie, and check out this week's gameplay, and we talked about Leia. check out this week's gameplay. But man, A-Wing turn 1, Partisans turn 2, and then you tap your leader to swing with them for 6.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a card that is going to be really interesting to see whether it starts to get cut, in my opinion. It is extremely good if
you have enough red to sustain.
Yeah. I think mono red is where this really shines, obviously.
Yeah. All yours hidden.
And it's going to be one of those situations where you do, like, a 3-cost 1/4 is... 2-cost 1/4 is fine, but it's not really doing that what aggression wants to do with it.
I think my favorite thing about this card is that it's a rebel, and I think if we get enough, if we get a few more rebel aggression units, then this deck really does shine in the layer deck. It definitely will hit the floor running in a deck that I'm interested in seeing, which is mono red Sabine, because I think aggression in that deck, being able to kill something and untap something, being able to, because like. You got the Sabine unit that pings for direct damage. You've got the Fighters for Freedom, which pings for direct damage. Your leader, which pings for direct... Like, being able to be like, cool, aggression to kill this and ping your base for 1 and untap my 2-cost Sabine unit that swung at you and swing again, or untap my Partisans to swing again. Like, that kind of stuff is stuff that I think would be really interesting to see. Just that, like, progressive chip damage. We don't have enough yet. But I like that we're moving towards it.
I think this is a really solid target for a wing leader.
Yeah,
I think turning it into a 3/6 is just really good, even if you don't.
And then if you hit it, it becomes a 5/6.
Yeah.
Like, that's solid. And I think the fact that this card just really does get made by the fact that it's a rebel, in my opinion. I think it wouldn't be too bad if it was just a regular trooper. But I think the fact that it's
really makes it shine. Really makes it be able to be used in a lot more context than would generally.
I'm pretty sure it is a trooper, which means that just to chuck it out there, there's a fine card in Tarkin Troopers if you want, because you've got access to First Legion Snowtrooper, like Stormtrooper, like all that kind of stuff. You've got enough troopers in there to warrant that you probably have a red unit in the form of like a Interceptor or something else. So. It could go in that deck, but I definitely think that it really shines in a rebel deck.
I do think we're starting to reach a point where there's enough troopers that you're starting to cut some. Like when the deck first started, it was put every single trooper in, but now it's going to be that kind of situation where you are going to have to start to cut some.
I agree. For those who don't know, though, the Partisans are Saw Gerrera's guys, so that's pretty neat. Maybe because we saw a Rogue One leader, huh? We'll talk about her later. That probably just gave it away. But maybe we see Saw. Maybe as our red rare leader, and that wouldn't be too bad. I mean, Saw Gerrera is pretty neat. I kind of rate this card. I think this is pretty good. I do think, being realistic though, it's like a 2.5. Because I think that right now it's really good, but you are right, in the future, if there's just another unit that gets shown that's better, then it definitely is a cut. And speaking of another trooper, also guy with gun, also rebel, that is also really good and also costs 2, we have Battlefield Marine.
This card is really good.
This card's wild. So
we talked a lot when we first started talking about the game about simple efficiency.
Yeah, this is it.
And I think no other card is as good as much merit to that as this. As a simple 2-cost hero command 3/3.
That's it. That's all it does. It's a 3/3 on turn 1 with no raid. So unlike the A-Wing, it doesn't have raid. So if you trade into this, boy howdy, you better be ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think
this is immediately we can start transitioning into that kind of this idea of a mid-range deck that we were talking about with this card.
Or even this works really well in aggro for Leia, because it's a rebel, guys. Like, it's a 3/3 rebel. Turn 1 this, turn 2 Fleet Lieutenant, turn 3 swing for 6. Like, tapping your leader. Like, there's a lot to be said about just efficiency. This is a wing leader target.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a card that will trade favorably against so many things.
Yeah. Especially if you're using the leader we talk about in a bit. I mean, her ability is pretty wild. She lets you reduce power when you swing into things. So having a unit like this in there to just trade up, but consistent trades like this. Hey, you played a 2/3 turn 1. Well, I played a 3/3. Yours is dying. I'm living.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when the villain red is so keen on that first turn, First Legion Snowtrooper.
Yeah.
Coming in as that 2/3, really solid first turn play.
Ozzles.
Yeah.
Man, I can think of a bunch like Ozzle, most of the troopers. Man, like even trading into a cell block guard with this. Like, I pay 3 for a cell block guard. Cool. Well, I had this 2 cost 3 out since turn 1.
Yeah, absolutely.
Might as well get in there and it'll do its job.
Yeah, this is a card that just loves to trade up on itself, and just this is a card you always are happy to see turn 1 and play turn 1.
Yeah, just getting that out there. He's a massive threat, and like talking about it again, like cutting back to Wilderness Trooper, Survivor, whatever it is. I want to use removal on this card, but it just doesn't feel that good because the card doesn't do anything, but I know it does something. It's that weird feeling you get when you're like, cool, I have to remove it, but it does. I feel like removing this means I'm wasting removal for something later that's better, but I need to remove it now so it doesn't snowball. It just puts your opponent in a weird position, and I like that. I like cards that make your opponent go, what am I meant to do? I like cards that make me do that because it means I'm playing a game that's really thought out. I really like this card. I think this is a brilliant addition to the Rebel subtype. I think it's a brilliant addition to any layer deck. As you guys know, one of my favorite leaders in this game, if not my favorite leader in this game.
I think it's just a brilliant addition to any hero green deck that you're running.
Fully
if you are
agree.
running a hero green deck, you're running this card
this
like
as a
90% of the time.
Yeah. I actually reckon I give this card like a 4.5 out of 5.
Yeah.
I just think it's so well costed. I think its abilities are, I think its traits are really relevant, especially being a rebel. It just synergizes with like all of those good, like Dodonna hits it to make it a 4/4. Fleet Lieutenant hits it to swing in with 5. Wing Leader hits it to make it a 5/5. Like,
yeah.
You bloody hell, medal ceremony. Let's even get that card in there to make it a 4/4.
Yeah, people have been hot on medal ceremony.
Yeah,
people love it.
Yeah, so 4.5 out of 5 for this guy. This guy is by far just a solid card, and I love to see it. Give me more Rebels for layer.
But as we were saying, mid-range is about more than anything, I think, value.
For sure.
Value is one of the key things of playing a mid-range deck. The idea to me of what a mid-range deck does is just every single turn does a little bit, just gets more value than you, and eventually just wins because of it.
And the deck is called mid-range because it does that kind of like, it's a jack of all trades, master of none, right? Like, it runs a little removal, it runs a little like aggro. It can pivot if it needs to, but it doesn't commit fully to one. You're not going to see a mid-range deck lock down everything you do. You play a unit, they get rid of it. You're not going to see a mid-range deck start the game off and go like bang, 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 swing, 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 swing. And like you could potentially see them do that, but it's not happening all the time. That's maybe happening 1 out of 20 times. A mid-range deck is going to use all of the resources they have available to snowball and get ahead of you. You're going to be playing 2 for a unit and you leaving 1 resource open. Well, they're paying 3 and getting the most value out of that unit.
Yeah.
And that's
And
the kind
a
of
lot of
deck
the time they're looking for that 2-for-1 trades. They're
Yeah.
looking for those trades that
just value up.
being able to swing in something, clear it, and then stay on the board.
Yeah.
And I think no leader has been more important to that than the latest leader that's been revealed to us, Jinna. She is incredible, probably the best mid-range leader that we've seen.
Yeah, I'd say that. I reckon that's the case.
And it's purely because her ability is fantastic. Her ability is you may tap her to attack with a unit. The defending unit
gets -1.
Gets -1, -0. So that just means, awesome, I'm swinging my Marine Battlefield Marine into your Viper Probe droid, cool.
I'm swinging my Battlefield Marine into your Battlefield Marine.
Absolutely. Then I'm clearing your unit. My unit's going to stay alive because you're only going to be doing 2 damage back rather than that 3 because you're getting that -1.
Nice C3PO. Swing into it. I take no damage. You take 3.
Yeah.
Like if I'm swinging with a Marine or something like that. I think this is so good. This leader enables trade ups. This leader wants to trade up. She wants to go, and she is a cunning hero. There you go. She's the other cunning hero. She's our common one. She flips at 6.
6 resources. Yep.
Flips at 6, and I believe she's a 4/7.
She's a 4/7, the same stat line as Boba.
Boba, and her flipped ability is a passive, and the passive is, when you attack, the defending unit gets -1/-.
When any allied unit attacks.
Any single
so
unit.
So it's when she attacks, when your A-Wing attacks, when your Battlefield Marine attacks, when anything attacks, if it's attacking into a unit, that unit will get -1/-0 for that battle.
So good. Now, this leader is cunning, which, my opinion, really, a lot of those hero yellow cards are coming across as those value cards. Because she's a mid-range deck, she makes the most use out of Spark of Rebellion. Look at your hand, get the thing that counters me out. But I think Jin, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, I was like, mono yellow Jin looks really good. I think she was good. And you actually brought up something that I think is even better. Blue yellow Jin. And there's a number of cards why. And I think to start it off, there's a card that I really like in the early game plays. Ezra. Man, I swing Ezra into your unit, and I make you take... I take less damage, and then I flip the top card of my deck.
Yeah. Ezra's great regardless. I think Ezra in Jin is just another step of like use out of him. I find I'm always quite scared to swing into things with Ezra. I want to try and keep him on board as much as possible, but Jin does allow that little bit of wiggle room. And especially because Ezra must complete the attack. Yeah. There can be a lot of times when you can swing into something.
You hit that break point and it's just kind of like, if that 1 damage wasn't there, but Jin's like, no, I got you.
Yeah.
That 1 damage isn't there. Now, blue affords my second favorite archetype in the game, if not my favorite. It's really tied at the top there between Rebels, and that's Force. And we have recently seen some absolute bangers. So I think some other great notable cards in a Jin deck, Kanan.
Yep.
He swings. If you've got Ezra out, he makes you mill more. Gets a bit of that heal in there. Yoda is an absolute amazing card in this deck because he's hitting. He's probably going to get 2 to 3 units out of there before he even dies, and he's restoring. Jedi lightsaber. We finally got the English version for this card.
We did talk about it last week, so we won't go over it again. But
this card, I think, is nearly broken on Ezra because you make Ezra a 6/7 with on attack, give the defending unit -2/-2.
Yeah, I think it's
with Jin, you're giving -3/-2. Like. What is that? That's insane.
Yeah, that is a unit that needs to be vanquished or needs to be waylaid or something. Otherwise, it's just going to clear out your entire board.
When Ezra came out, we were like, man, you got to kill this guy.
Yeah.
Now that there's cards like Jedi lightsaber, you must kill Ezra, and you can't even consistently deal damage to Ezra because if he's swinging into something, Jin's going to prevent him from taking it if he's got the lightsaber on him because that -3, -2 is probably eliminating the damage. Like, that's a Viper Pro droid dead on declaration. But you run it binds all things because you've got Kanans, because you've got Ezra's, because you've got Yoda's. Because it binds all things as a value card because you're protecting those pieces that are giving you that value. You're moving damage off of them. Oh man, open fire Ezra. Awesome. Swing Ezra into your Viper Probe droid. It dies. Look at the top. Well, pay 2. It binds all things. Kill your other guy. Heal Ezra for 3. And he's just sitting here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm excited to test more on Jin. I think Jin is going to be... I think at the moment, the Jin is missing something.
I agree.
And I think we're going to see that when we see Cassian, when we see K2SO, when we see Chirrut, when we see
Yeah, I'm so
Baz.
excited. I definitely want Chirrut to be a hero vigilance unit. I'd love him to be Force. I think that'd be really sweet. I definitely want to see some more play arounds with that, because now as we get closer to release, we are seeing more awesome cards. We are seeing that snowball effect. I think one thing to consider as well with mid-range is, whilst they're using their resources, they might not have a big build-up play. They might not just have that one thing they drop, because they don't need to, because their cards are consistently valuable. But that doesn't mean they don't keep ramping up in value. You know, your first turn play might be, you know, a Greedo or something like that, and then your second turn play might be an Ezra into your third turn play of a Kanan. But as you're ramping up, you still want to make use of your resources to the most effectivity as you can to make sure you're getting ahead. And we recently got a unit revealed, one that I love. This is exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, we've been waiting for this for a while.
Yeah.
We've said that it's coming, and lo and behold, it's here, and it's as good as we hoped it would be.
And it exemplifies, I think, what mid-range wants.
Yeah.
It has an immediate effect. It has great stats. The surrounding support for it is amazing in a value engine. It's Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Return of the Jedi, Luke Skywalker, green lightsaber
Emperor's
in the throne room.
It is at the height of the movie. He's wearing his black outfit with the white showing through. This card's amazing. It's our blue hero legendary.
It is our blue hero. Well, one of possibly.
Maybe. Who knows at this point. But, James, tell us the man's cost, stats, and what he does.
The man is a 7 cost. Obviously, he is heroism, and he is vigilance. He is a 6/7.
Good stats.
With Restore 3.
That's the most restore we've ever seen on the card.
That is huge. He also has the ability, when played, you may give a unit -3/-3. Alternatively, if a friendly unit has been defeated this turn, give a unit -6/-6.
He is a Force Jedi Rebel. That
Luke
is
Skywalker.
Awesome. Okay, so let's break this down. He'll use your resources on the turn you play him. He gets an immediate effect.
Yep, minusing something, probably
killing something.
Especially if you've lost something that turn, easily, -6/-6 is easily killing a lot of stuff.
Killing a small body, or my favorite play, oh man, nice Vader leader, swing into it with my 2/2. You got my Vader, but he's still got 6 health left. Oh, well, yeah, you did kill my 2/2. Luke, -6/-6, your Vader leader. Yeah. He hits to 0 health, he's dead.
Or even if something dies, just throwing down that against something bigger and being like, your AT-ST is now at 0-1.
Nice card.
I'll swing into it with my
R2
regional governor.
Yeah, imagine getting beaten up by a regional governor and you're an AT-ST. I think that it's amazing. And then you constantly getting value after it with the restore.
Yeah, and just a lot of restore. You have home 1 the turn after that. Suddenly he's restoring 4 every swing. Yeah. You've got Luke's lightsaber to fully heal him and give him a shield.
Especially with the stat line, you do that, he becomes a 9/8 with restore 3, a shield, swinging him wherever you want. He's a Force unit. It binds all things. You really want to get crazy? Jedi lightsaber this man and make him a 9/10 that on attack -2/-2 restores 3 something. I think this card's awesome. I think it really exemplifies what value wants. A lot of the time, value wants an immediate effect and a staying effect. And if it can get both, it's laughing. And this card fits that bill really well as not a finisher per se. I mean, most of the time it probably will be, but like a really late game value piece to play Luke and turn the tide. Other cards I can think of for a value deck that really meet this niche are Han Solo, Mace Windu.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of 7 costs that are coming out, especially for Hero, that have that kind of similar vibes of they're getting value in different ways. So Han Solo has that, I kill 1 unit a turn, and unless you do something against me, I'm just going to keep
alive.
killing 1 unit a turn.
Yeah.
Mace Windu's like, I'm going to clear your whole board, you better stop me.
Yeah.
I'm going to clear everything. I'll
He is
do
the
it.
party
I will,
crasher.
I will clear your whole board and I'll swing at your face. I
And-
do not care.
You can give Mace Windu a Jedi lightsaber now, and he can just get in there, and like he'll be like, "You can't hurt me, bah! You can't hurt me, bah! You can't hurt me, bah!" Like he's this
Cutting
man,
off Django's head left, right, and center.
man is furious. But I think that's kind of some of the cool stuff we can see, and Villain definitely has its fair share of value too. In my opinion, Vader is actually an amazing value leader. He's constantly netting you an ability that pings your opponent's base and units simply for playing villain cards. Oh, hey, I have a free extra resource this turn. I played my cards. Great. Use my Vader leader. And on the turn he comes out, he is the best statted leader in the game.
Yeah, I think Tarkin is an extremely strong mid-range leader as well.
Yeah.
Yes, we've seen kind of a move towards the Tarkin Troopers, which is more of an aggressive build.
That is an aggressive deck, but I would
But
still
there is-
class that
yeah.
as a mid-range deck.
There is definitely builds of Tarkin that are dedicated to just all your units getting bumped up, having better value, trading better than your opponent, and when you just trade every single unit better, eventually your opponent just doesn't have any units, and you have
in a deck like Tarkin, Emperor's Royal Guard, a 3-cost 3/4 that you're gonna keep buffing up. He's gonna get bigger, and then Tarkin comes out, and boom, he is the best trading unit you've got, and he's a Sentinel. So stuff like that, I think, is really important to consider when we're talking about mid-range. And not only that, but it's just mid-range like cards that swing the value in your favor, even if it uses all of your resources. Home 1 is a great mid-range value card because you're slamming it down. Your whole board gets restored. You can start working your way back up. My favorite play with Home 1 is Home 1 Fleet Lieutenant to immediately swing with something. It's buffed up and I'm restoring 1. Like, you're going to get that value. Can you imagine Home 1 Fleet Lieutenant to swing with the Luke you played earlier for 8 damage restore 4? That's insane.
That's very strong, yes. I think as we're talking mid-range, it's one of those things where we've talked about aggro and we've talked about control. And right now, the fact is there is not one of these archetypes is not better than the other.
No, they're all kind of
And I think
chilling.
there's no way we could recommend one over the other. I think these are personal play styles that you're more inclined to play. I will probably always move towards a control to like high control mid-range kind of deck, whereas Reese is going to go that lower end mid-range to the aggro kind of deck. I think that's why one of the things like we have.
I love a bigger punch. Huh?
Like obviously I'll play my aggro decks, like I play Red Hun, stuff like that, but I do prefer that more control-y deck, and definitely have some spicy brews that I have concocting about on the control side of things.
There's a capital MILL in there somewhere that I'm very not fond of. But yeah, James is right. The great thing, and that's a good thing, that this game has mid-range value and aggro no higher than the others, because they shouldn't be. There will definitely be decks that will be better than other decks, but the good thing is that we can look at these archetypes and say, this is great, because this card can slot happily into all the archetypes. Or this was made for these archetypes. Like right now, Sabine yellow. Sure, I'd say that's a rush deck. That's your aggro for the format if you wanted to get down to it. Boba Fett, any of them, pick a color. Pick one of the 4 colors. That's your control deck. And then your mid-range.
Well, I would say control. Personally, I would say that the
So the red, yellow, and green versions.
I'd say the green version is mid-range. I would say the red is...
Yellow is absolutely control.
Yellow is absolutely control. The mono yellow Boba is a huge control.
I think that the red one is as well, because you're using force strokes and things like that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll concede the point on the green one.
Yeah.
Green blue Luke, a deck that I played a little while ago. Must say, very much enjoyed the deck they played on stream.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a mid-range. That's for sure a mid-range deck. It hits all the points it wants. It does what it wants to do. And like even the archetypes themselves kind of fall into the categories in a way. Like looking at the the villain side of things that kind of wants to be like more control-y to get your bigger stuff out. Then your middle of the road stuff is like kind of your fringe guys hanging out, doing whatever, and then your rebels are your aggro, lower to the ground, kind of swingy cards. It's cool to see. I'm very much enjoying it. I think Force as well sits in your mid-range. Like Force seems really value-oriented about having those units there as a prerequisite.
Especially being able to constantly top up that life total, constantly being able to add another 2 damage and add another 3 damage. It's really going to frustrate those aggro players.
I think my favorite thing is we did see It Binds All Things come out, and I know a lot of people were like, it's probably not going to be good, or, we have to wait and see for more Force units are out now. And hey guys, we've got them, and I can confirm It Binds All Things is now, in my opinion, one of the best cards.
We've waited, we've seen, it's good.
It's great. If you're running Yoda, if you find yourself sitting there and you're going, man, I've got, my leader's Luke, and I've got Ezra's, Kanan's, and Yoda's in my deck, run It Binds All Things. Run Jedi Sabers. Do it. These units are coming out, and you want them to stay, make them stay. And make sure you get the most value out of it too. So I think that it's good to see the game evolve. I think, off the top of my head, what are some other good mid-range cards? I think Mission Briefing is pretty solid for mid-range and control. From my play style, in all honesty, you may see this card and go, hey, this is aggro to refill your hand. But it's actually not, because you don't want to waste the tempo of paying 3. Whereas in mid-range, you'll maybe happy to use the resources to get ahead. And in control, your opponent's not doing anything, and you need to get more cards to control them with. So, pay attention.
I think one of my top mid-range cards is Agent Callus.
For sure. He comes down, immediate effect, more than likely going to draw you a card, even if he dies. And then if he stays, well...
Yeah, I think it's a huge... I think Bright Hope is a very good mid-range card, especially with Agent Callus. Agent Callus comes down, swings, next turn you can Bright Hope, bounce him back, do it again.
I think Bright Hope only bounces a hero unit, or is it ground unit? No, it's ground unit. Right. I think one of my favourite plays with Bright Hope is Fleet Lieutenant, swing with something, Bright Hope, bounce a Fleet Lieutenant back, draw a card. You're going to get that Fleet Lieutenant value again. I think it's sweet. I think, there's like... It's really interesting to see these cards. I think some other interesting cards are things like Luke's lightsaber and Vader's lightsaber. Now, these aren't actually mid-range cards. And the reason is, yes, they're cheap. Yes, they give a good buff. But in order to fully utilize them, you need to really have those hard prerequisites. And depending on your mid-range deck, you're not gonna. So it's things like these cards where don't be fooled just because you run this or that. You don't need to run these cards, because I'm sure when the game fully releases, there'll be a lot better options. But that's also not saying that Luke's lightsaber is amazing. If you're playing a Luke deck and you're running the leader, or you're running the 7 cost, and
or you're running both,
and you're a Force predominant deck, it's definitely something I would consider. My main takeaway for that one is Vader's lightsaber. I don't really see that card run much anymore, even in Vader decks. In my Vader deck, which I'm absolutely loving, that's my mid-range deck for this format, is my aggro deck is Leia, mwah, kiss, chef's kiss, love it. My other deck that I'm surprised that I really like is, it leans heavier on the control side, which surprised me, but it is blue-red Vader Force. And I love it because I think it has the ability to pivot to aggro really easily with Fifth Brother, with putting lightsabers on it. And I love that deck snowballs and builds up into Vader just to win. So I think that's pretty interesting too. Do you have any closing thoughts on any cool mid-range cards or any things that we haven't discussed mid-range wise?
I think when we kind of talk about mid-range, I think Vigilance is probably one of the biggest mid-range components. I think their ability to restore and just get value off...
That's the mid-range colour,
I think is huge. So I think when we're going to be looking at those value mid-range decks, I think a lot of them are going to be splashing blue.
I'm pretty sure every single deck we've talked about that was mid-range is blue. And one of the main proprietors of that is that the Force engine's really good. Like even in my blue Vader deck, I run It Binds All Things, I run the Fallen Lightsabers, I run the Fifth Brothers, because I'm getting value out of that. And I think you're right. I think that blue has its cards like Takedown is a great value removal because it's probably hitting everything in the game. Vanquish is great value removal because it definitely is hitting everything but leaders. You've got Restore on cheap bodies, so you can maintain yourself so that you can extend even if you're in an aggro matchup. I think one good thing about mid-range as well that we didn't talk too much about is that deck wants to have the answers, not in a way that Control has the answers, but it wants to have the answers in a way that, cool, okay, you're playing Control, well, I'll just play a few pieces that get around it. Like, or I'll go wide enough that you can't control everything.
Yeah.
Hey, you're playing aggro? Cool. I'll focus on removing your board and getting ahead from my trades and healing with my Restore. You know, like with mid-range, you can afford to wait it out against Control, and you can afford to positive trade your opponent if they're playing aggro to just stay alive. So I think mid-range is interesting there. It's a neat deck because it wants to be the foil, but it also doesn't.
I think it's, at the end of the day, mid-range will encompass a lot of the deck scene. I think...
It usually does.
Like, you can have people confuse mid-range deck for aggro decks because they versed it and it happened to go down that route.
Yeah.
But I think one of the key things about a mid-range deck is that it has the ability to choose and change itself depending on what. Whereas Control and aggro are much more locked into their play style. You play those decks and you know every single game how you're going to play. A mid-range deck varies it up. It depends what you draw. It depends what your opponent plays.
That can be its downfall too. So that's why you're probably sitting there going, well, hold on. If mid-range can do aggro and Control, why don't I just play mid-range? Its downfall is that, as I said at the beginning, it's a jack of all trades, master of none. It doesn't control as well as Control can, and it doesn't win the race if it tries to outrace aggro as much as it can. But the luxury is, hey, my mid-range deck is up against this Control deck. Well, I know that aggro beats it, so that early game I can race, and yeah, I can't race as hard as an aggro deck, so I'll slow down, but that means I can at least get ahead, so in the late game, I'm probably going to win because of it. If I'm against an aggro deck, I can't win the race here, but I can spend my early turns removing and outvalue them in the late game, and you get that pivot, you get that really good stuff. So if you're a newer player, and you don't, find aggro attractive or Control attractive, mid-range is your bet because, and pretty much every deck, like I would say the vast majority of decks end up becoming mid-range because, hey, James, I want to run these cards. Oh, well, great. Put them in a deck together. They synergize well enough to make a deck and bada bing, bada boom, it works. You win a couple games and, well, that's a mid-range deck.
Yeah.
If it's not racing out or controlling hard, then...
Yeah. Versatility is a key for
sure.
Like, it has the versatility to have many options rather than, as we said, the other decks being more focused in their lanes.
Space. Outmaneuver.
But yeah, like you're probably not gonna see a mid-range deck space race.
Nah, that's aggro. That's a big aggro feels.
So it is one of those things where that mid-range is always going to have that split of space and ground.
Mid-range is like when you think of a traditional deck, you're probably thinking of a mid-range deck.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting. I think that's cool. I love it. I think, you just don't want to go too hard into one thing with mid-range, and that can be its downfall. A lot of mid-range decks can brick, just like a lot of aggro decks can, but it kind of is that deck where you trade you trade your strengths of one deck for the weaknesses of that deck at the same time. Like, you get the weaknesses and strengths of both archetypes at the same time in the one deck.
Yeah.
So you have the weaknesses and strengths of Control, you have the weaknesses and strengths of aggro, and you need to regulate that. And these decks tend to have a lot more options. Like, when I look at Asteroid Sanctuary, or when I look at a card like Outmaneuver, there we go. I'm not going to put this in my aggro deck. I might put this in my mid-range deck. I'm probably going to put it in my Control deck. So that's where kind of we're sitting with that kind of radar. But I think we're nearly done here.
Yeah, I think
before we go, we did get carried away talking about them. I was going to save this for the last two. Jin, I reckon I like her a lot. I like her quite a lot, actually. I give her a 4 out of 5 on the Spiceometer. Luke, may be biased. I may definitely be biased on this one. This is exactly what I wanted in the card. I think it's really good. I think it's something that we'll definitely see, especially because I know from the other 7 cost units we've seen, like Mace Windu, you know, I know it's not a 7 cost, but Han Solo is a 7 cost. For Han Solo, or just like in that vicinity, Emperor Palpatine. I give Luke like a 4.5 out of 5, if not a 5. I think that he just does it all. It's true to the character. The card's awesome. The art's awesome. I think it's great. But those are my ratings for those ones.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys very much for watching. Please check out the gameplay this week. It will be Chewbacca versus Leia. It'll be very interesting. But yeah, other than that, thank you guys very much. Please subscribe if you have not already. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.